Hey, I'm Rachel, and I am probably what you would describe as a very unlikely entrepreneur. I started a business at 25 years old, kind of blindly. I mean, I had no financial backing, no family connections, or even business background whatsoever. And today, that company has over 200 people on payroll. So this is going to be a series where I break down the fundamentals of business, in my opinion, in a very non-jargony way, because ain't nobody got time for that, and essentially tell you things in a way that I wish someone told me when I was first starting. Today, we're going to tackle the subject of how to start a company that doesn't suck. Now, we've all heard that glooming stat that 90% of startups fail. And why do we think that is? Because it is freaking hard. Much harder than Gwyneth Paltrow makes it look. There are so many factors into why a business fails from the beginning. Maybe the idea is just not good enough, or maybe there's a bad marketing plan, or you don't have the right skill set or right connections. Honestly, it is quite the maze. So why don't we start at the beginning? Tip number 1, start complaining. We all kind of instinctively do it. We probably started when we were around 4 or 5 years old, maybe even 3. I mean, they say it's the terrible 3, so probably 3. Terrible 2, sorry, I don't have kids. If you take a step back and think about it, it makes sense, because often the things that you complain about, they need solutions, and those solutions, when packaged properly, could become a great business. So get out your pen and paper or your notes in your phone and start jotting down all the things that annoy you, and then on another column, you basically write all the things that you think could solve that problem, and then you cross-reference that. It's basically like you're playing business matchmaker. It's quite a lot of fun. Tip number 2, market research. Now, you have the idea, you think it's a great idea, but is it actually a good idea? It still might suck, you're not exactly sure. So now you have to really verify that. It's time to channel all that investigative high school energy that you know, I know you have, and start finding out if your idea has already been thought of. Now, if they have, don't fret. There could be multiple variations of the same type of service or product. Just look at how many options of skinny tea there are on Instagram. Point made. You just have to make sure if you could do it a little different and, quite honestly, a little better. And better could pertain to ways of like branding, pricing, customer service, whatever you want. This is really the moment where you have to let your creative entrepreneur inside really run wild. Just like Rihanna says. Wow, wow, wow. Tip number 3, get yourself a mentor. Now, say that you have your idea, but you're still a little unsure about it, which is totally valid, because it's not like you necessarily went to school to understand supply chains and tax law and profit margins. Well, this is where a mentor could come in handy. I like to think of a mentor kind of like a sports coach, just less aggressive. You know, like Harry Potter had Dumbledore, Frodo had Gandalf, Kylie Jenner had her mom. Like, who do you have? There are many benefits to having a mentor. They're your go-to to run over ideas. They understand aspects of the business that you may not have learned yet. They'll be able to see roadblocks before you even could imagine what those would be, which in turn will save you a lot of time. And right when you're about to hit this crisis mode, I'm, stopping the business, changing my identity, cutting my hair, giving myself bangs, they'll probably tell you not to and tell you to get a clip-on instead, which has happened and could very well happen to you too. Do I have regret? Yes. Do I have as much as I could have? No, thanks to my mentor. Thank you. So personally, I recommend finding your mentor through people that you know, that you respect, that are in a similar industry. That being said, if you are truly starting from scratch, shout out, I recommend going online and looking up meetup groups, different clubs. There's so many different niches, and that will definitely get you on the right path. But promise me one thing, and that is that you will not settle. When you meet your mentor, it should feel like you're watching The Bachelor. When they lay eyes on the first night on the person that they're going to give the first impression rose to, and you're like, oh, it's going to be that person, and you just kind of know, and you're like, of course, because look at their chemistry, it's so right. That is what it should feel like when you meet your mentor. Tip number 4, write your story. When I first started my business, it was on the heels of a very public layoff. And so I ended up turning to YouTube to just communicate my feelings, what I was going through. That YouTube video ended up getting a lot of views, which then turned into about a year of me taking off and learning everything there was about vlogging and YouTube, and I built a little audience. And then finally, about a year later, when I came up with this business idea, it was a lot easier for me to actually launch the business and have customers immediately because they already knew my story. So those viewers of my YouTube became my first customers. Think about it this way, even if just one person out of say 100 or 1,000, doesn't matter, one person watches something you put out and in turn becomes a customer, that is really all you need to really light the fire, because what that one customer will do for you is allow you to create a case study. And once you have the case study, you can go out and get more targeted customers. I used to run a podcast and it was basically interviewing creators about business. And I will never forget one creator in particular. He said, you need a book, a look, and a hook. And that stuck with me forever. Well, for the last few years since I heard it. So like 3 years. Your book is essentially your story and why people are going to care. Your look is your branding. That's the colors, that's the graphics, essentially what is the vibe that your company is giving off. And lastly, your hook is essentially what makes you different. Once you've figured out these 3 things, you're ready for the next step. All right, and tip number 5, start taking action. The fastest way to success, and honestly just not looking like a fool, is starting to take action immediately. Plus, who wants all that pressure of talking a big game and coming up short? I know, quite harsh. But that's business, baby. I personally am a huge believer in momentum. It's something I have been super cognizant about throughout my career. So it's like when you get a big win, definitely like celebrate it, but keep running. Keep like running on that energy that is just rippling throughout. Like you can feel it and other people can feel it too. I mean, just think about like TikTokers. At one point, not so very long ago, they're like renegading. I think that's a renegade. And then now, because they've just continued it and then got bigger and bigger and that ball just kept growing and growing. And now they're starring in Hollywood movies? Like from renegading to that? Like, if momentum doesn't exist, what's that? Tip number 6, building your network of customers. Honestly, instead of putting all that time into swiping left and right and connecting with people on dating apps, why not rechannel that energy and connect with people on LinkedIn? Start by adding all the relevant people to your industry and sending them a thoughtful message. Nothing too salesy right off the bat at all, and definitely nothing automated. May I repeat, nothing automated. Those are so cringy, and honestly, you don't need anybody thinking that you're just trying to sell them software from halfway across the world. Of course, you could also find people to expand your network at places like events or conventions or private apps like the audio-based app Clubhouse. But personally, I think that LinkedIn is a great place to start, and I think that it does go without saying, stay away from places like networking on like Craigslist and Kijiji, unless you want to go missing like Carol Baskin's husband. Tip number 7, the last tip, start making content. Remember when brands could only advertise on TV shows and billboards and on the radio, and it was like you had to go through a sales agent and all that blah, blah, blah. It was like really annoying. I mean, you still can. But the fact that we have the internet and all these social networks, you can market whatever you want, your services, your product, your company, for free. With whatever content you're making, try to incorporate your hook, your look, and your book. I often like to compare that YouTube is a lot like television and podcasts are a lot like radio. Wherever you were seeing ad breaks or product placement, you could essentially do the same within your entire control. Now, it could be a video vlog about you documenting the journey of building your business. It could be a podcast where you interview your clients in hopes that their network hears it and also wants to hire you. Not to mention, you could open up a whole new revenue stream by your company actually sponsoring the ad breaks. And obviously, you wouldn't have to pay for it. Jasmine was right. We really do live in a whole new world. Anyways, I'm gonna leave it at that because that is a lot of information to digest, to the point where you may actually need some skinny tea to push that all down. Just kidding, that's really gross. Like I said, I often look back at that time when I first started my company, and that was hands down the most foggy, confusing time. So my hope is that these 7 tips have given you more than one direction to think about. I will actually never grow up. Anyways, hope you have a lovely day, and remember, stay focused, stay fearless, and stay fabulous. I will see you soon.